Okay, so all of the new cards have finally been announced. I'm going to run through every single one of them. Obviously, some of the cards have already been talked about, so I'm going to go over the newest ones first, but I'm just going to give my basic thoughts on everything, so let's jump into it. The first thing is Gangster, 2 mana 4/2 stealth minion. After your opponent plays a minion, attack it. So this minion is probably not going to go face ever, but it could be a very aggressive option into a slower deck. Let's say that you're playing against a warlock that's going kind of control, doesn't have a minion to play turn 2, boom, you do 4 damage, same thing with the mage. This card looks really interesting. In worst case scenario, it'll just kill a minion that an opponent plays, maybe even on curve, so I think that the Gangster looks pretty good. Next, we have Gift of Nero. I haven't seen any of these cards yet. This is basically my first impression, by the way. Gift of Nero. Restore 3 health to all characters. If any are still damaged, draw a card. And this says all characters. So this includes heroes. So there's a very possibility that you're playing as a control deck, you've been taking a lot of damage, you heal yourself 3, draw a card, also maybe heal up a minion on the board of yours, which is, less important because you're playing against an aggro deck, but even if you're playing against something slower or mid-range, there should be something still damaged on the board. The only downside is you healed the opponent's stuff too, so you, as long as you play around that and trade into the things you want to trade into first and then play Gift of Nero, it should be fine and you'll draw a card. So it's definitely not bad. Am I saying it's good? Yeah, I'd say it's like a 3.5 to 4. It's a solid card, I think, if you play around it correctly. Next thing we have is Glacite. Glacite? I don't know how to say that. I'm sorry. 6 mana, discover an 8-cost minion, summon and freeze it. So this card looks pretty solid to me. It's a frost spell, so it'll help Frost Shaman a lot. You're cheesing out a minion a turn early. It's frozen, but there are probably ways to unfreeze it. At least there should be. I don't know. I haven't actually seen all the new cards like I just said. But even if it's frozen for a while, if you can just discover like a taunt minion, it's still good. Or a minion with an ongoing ability. There are some ways that this will not end up working out for you. There are some times that it'll feel kind of bad. But as long as you can get a taunt minion or something that is proactive or has a good ability, or maybe even just like a deathrattle, let's just say you can kill off your own minion or something, this could be a pretty solid card, but I think it's going to be very situational. So I'd say it's like a 3 maybe. Next is Glory Chaser. After you play a taunt minion, draw a card. It's a 3 mana 4/3, so it's decent to just play on tempo. Like, you don't have to play this with another taunt minion. But if you play this turn 3 and you just happen to play a taunt minion turn 4, like this into, say, Sword Eater, very good taunt minion that also gives you a weapon. Has some nice synergy. Do I think it's necessarily a great card? Not really. I think it'll be more of an arena card. But I could see it seeing some play. There are some new taunt minions coming out with this new expansion, so I think that this could be pretty interesting. Next is a 1 mana Grave Defiler. Battlecry, copy a Fel spell in your hand. I like this. I always like cards that generate more resources. Fel spells are spells that aren't actually run that much in a Warlock right now, but I think that there are more recently, especially with the new expansion. So I think that this could be pretty cool. And get a couple of new, not a couple of new, but you'll get 1 new card in your hand. You get a card to put out on the board turn 1, so since you're Warlock, you're usually pretty slow. You're able to up your tempo a little bit and also generate some resources, assuming you have a Fel spell in your hand right away. So I actually like that card just because of how cheap it is. You can just play it. Next we have Heart of the Wild. Give a minion +2/+2 and then give your beast +1/+1. Considering the fact that there are a lot of new beasts being released and the fact that Glowfly Swarm is also beasts, which somebody told me, I didn't realize that, but then somebody said Glowflies are beasts, and I was like, oh shoot, that's actually kind of broken. I think that means that this card actually has some pretty decent potential. Being 3 mana makes me think, why is it any better than Power of the Wild, right? Power of the Wild is literally the exact same thing, except no initial +2/+2, but it's just +1/+1 to all of your minions. Like, it doesn't have to be beasts. I think that this card is just worse than Power of the Wild. Don't really think it'll see that much play. Next, we have Herald of Localar. I am bad with names, I'm sorry. But Battlecry, draw a frost spell. It is a 4 mana 3/5. This will be pretty solid in a Freeze Shaman probably, or maybe some sort of mage deck that tries to run Frosts along with a couple of different spell schools potentially. It could be pretty solid. So I actually like this card a lot. Worst case scenario, it'll just be good in arena, and that's what I think some of these cards are. Like a decently statted minion with a draw spell for an ability. Might be a little weak for standard, although it might see some play, but definitely will be good in arena. Sorry, click that twice. Hold the bridge. Give a minion +2/+1 and Divine Shield. It gains lifesteal until end of turn. So it's a momentary lifesteal, but if you put this on a big, already pumped minion, it's really solid. It can then trade into a minion and not actually end up losing too much value if that's the case. So this card is just honestly really, really good, I think. It's a holy spell. I could see this card. So people currently run the mount that gives Divine Shield, the +1/+1 and Divine Shield. I'd say that if you're running that card, just replace it with Hold the Bridge. Because not only is it holy, so it reduces in cost, but it's also significantly more powerful. And yes, you don't get that deathrattle that you can then pump, but the lifesteal is just good, especially if the meta is even slightly aggressive. So I think this card looks pretty solid. Humongous Owl, 7 mana, 8/4, deathrattle, deal 8 damage to a random enemy. I think it's kind of weak. The fact that it could just die to 4 damage means that it's pretty vulnerable to a lot of stuff. Yes, it then probably kills off something else, but if the opponent kills it on their turn, they just flood the board with small minions and it doesn't really accomplish too much. Ice Revenant, 4 mana, 4/5. Whenever you cast a frost spell, gain +2/+2. Again, pretty decent for a frost spell, kind of like shaman deck or even a mage that runs multiple archetypes. And it might push elementals. Like you can put this in a frost spell mage deck that runs a top end like Grand Finale as their main win condition card with the extra elementals. I think that this card shows some promise. And a 4 mana 4/5 with the potential to get bigger is not bad. But again, might be more of an arena card, which is, like I said, what I think about the well-statted minions with like kind of underwhelming abilities. Next, we have Ice Trap. Ice Trap is basically counterspell, but for Hunter. When your opponent casts a spell, return it to their hand instead, and it costs 1 more. Luckily, you don't entirely lose the spell, but if you were trying to play something like Commencement or Proving Grounds on curve turn 6 or 7, it does basically end your turn right there. Yes, you can play it the following turn, so it's not totally over, like Counterspell just gets rid of the spell entirely, but it is definitely still very strong. And I'm excited about this, because this allows Hunters to potentially play around some removal if they want to play aggro decks, if you play it correctly. So yeah, I like this. I like the secret a lot, to be totally honest. I think this is one of the better cards being revealed. I'd say this is a 5 out of 5 card, especially considering Secret Hunter has seen so much support. Iceblood Garrison. One more of those other environmental cards. That is, at the end of your turn, deal 1 damage to all minions, and it lasts 3 turns. This could be good in like a frenzy deck, or just good for removal over the course of a couple of turns, because you know, hey, I don't need to kill these things exactly, I can leave them with 1 HP. And it's good against aggro, because it'll do that damage every single turn, so like Face Hunter with Wolpertingers or whatever, board will get wiped, and then if they play more minions, they still might get wiped, so it might slow down your opponent a little bit as well. I like this card a decent amount. I think it's broken, no, but solid in a control deck, yes. Next, we have Ice Hoof Protector. 6 mana, 2/10, taunt, freeze any character damaged by this minion. Honestly, that's pretty good. Those are some really solid stats that just make it very hard to kill. Very good in like a slower control freeze shaman, potentially. Like, how are they supposed to get over 10 HP without hitting it 2 or 3 times and then having the minions that hit it get frozen? Like, even if they play a big taunt or a big attack minion or a decent removal spell, like, this is 10 HP. Unless you're literally polymorphing it, this is going to be absolutely fine. 1 mana, 1/2, Iron Deep, Trog. After your opponent casts a spell, summon a copy of this. So, I think that your opponent casts the spell to make a copy. So if your opponent plays a single target spell to remove one of these, it'll spawn a new Trog, which means that it's going to be very, very difficult to remove. So you play this along with some sort of pumps. Let's just say you play this in Druid, and then you pump them all up with like Power of the Wild. It can be really, really strong. Or let's say you play this in Paladin. Summon a copy of this means that it'll summon a copy of it with the buffs on it, maybe even like Leavings of Wisdom and whatnot. So you can make this like an 8/8, or sorry, a 9/10 if you play Blessing of Authority, and it'll make a copy of that, assuming that this is able to last that long. So overall, I think this card could be cool. Maybe a single target spell will kill this before this ability triggers. It's just, I don't know about the wording of this sometimes, because sometimes I feel like the cards that say after thing is cast, it'll happen at 1 speed, and then other cards that read like the exact same will happen slightly differently. If it doesn't do what I'm saying it does, then it'll be significantly weaker. But if it does do what I think it does, then it's going to be actually really, really strong, and you could potentially even build decks around it, which would be nice. So next we have the Kobold Taskmaster. And also, don't be mad at me if I got this wrong. Again, this is first impressions. I haven't actually looked up any information about these cards. Maybe they explain this. But yeah, I think that it should activate, because cast a spell. It's like counter spell. When the spell is cast, it gets countered and the spell doesn't go off. So this is cast. The spell gets cast, this ability triggers, and then the spell resolves, is what I think it is. But anyway, 3 mana, 2/4 battle cry. Add 2 armor scraps to your hand that give 2 health to a minion. And this is it right here, armor scrap. It is a 1 mana, give a minion 2 health, which honestly might not be that bad. I think that this card could be decent in like a more spell-based like miracle deck where you want to play spells. There might be a deck that builds around it, or you could give health to a taunt minion. I'm not going to say this card is good. In fact, it probably isn't, but it might be really good in arena, right? Giving extra health to value trade, or just getting a 3 mana 2/4 out there that's not bad. Worst case scenario, it's a 5 mana 2/8, which I mean isn't great without taunt or anything, but it has flexibility with 4 health of its stats. So I think it's solid for arena. In standard, maybe a little bit. You could maybe play it in an aggro deck and use this to protect an important minion. Maybe protect like an Oracle of Elune with this. I don't know, just spitballing ideas here, but it looks like an interesting card. Next is Korak the Blood Rager. Deathrattle, if this wasn't honorably killed, resummon him. I think this card is cool, because like if they don't kill a minion, or if they don't kill him honorably on their turn, then you can trade it on your turn and make sure he doesn't die honorably, and then just resummon him, and he could potentially be like a pretty infinite minion. There are some ways that, like, there are a lot of 5-attack minions. There's some 5-attack spells. I could see this card be, there's also, like, silences and polymorphs and devolving missiles and all that. So, yes, you can play around it, but it does look like a pretty interesting card. Do I think it's broken? No. But again, arena, it'll be super good, and in standard, there could probably be decks that build around it. And they say resummon him, and I'm assuming he gets resummoned without any buff. So it's not like you could play this in like a buff paladin and give him tons of value. It's probably going to be just resummon him as a 3/5, which isn't bad, honestly. It's still a decent card. I'd say that it's very solid. And I'm probably going to try to build some decks around him. Legionnaire, 6 mana, 9/3, deathrattle, give all minions in your hand +2/2. This is a weird one. I want to say that it's good, but I also think that for 6 mana, having somebody just trade like maybe a 3/2 into it or drain soul a minion, like you're spending 6 mana to do that, but pumping up your entire hand +2/2, you could run this in a hand buff paladin potentially, even if it's just like 1 copy. Pump it up a couple of times by having death rattles, or not death rattles, divine shields die or get removed. And a banner of command. Next thing you know, you're playing this as like a 12/6. That's very hard to kill on turn 6. That also pumps up your minions more. I think that this will be very strong in some decks, but it will definitely not be for everyone. But Paladin will be able to use this pretty well. Maybe even like a beast-based druid, where you have a ton of beasts and then you just give them all pluses. I'm not entirely sure. But this card looks solid because of the insane pumps. Again, maybe not necessarily good. And there are silences and devolving and whatever in the meta, but I think that this card has some potential to be sure. Next is Luminous Geode. A 2 mana, 1/4, after a friendly minion is healed, gain 2 attack. It does specify minion, so it doesn't say friendly character, so it's not like if you heal yourself, but that combos very well with the card we said at the beginning, which is heal everything, and if anything is still damage, draw a card. This will be able to heal a whole bunch of stuff. This could be in a more aggressive, potentially an aggressive priest deck that isn't necessarily Shadow Priest. However, again, I think this is more of an arena card because I don't think that healing priest got enough support to actually warrant this. So moving on, we have the Piggyback Imp. A 3-mana 4/1 deathrattle, summon a 4/1 imp. Again, decent arena card because, and this is what I think of a lot of these kind of common cards with decent abilities and like kind of cool stat lines. This is essentially an 8/2 that you have to kill 2 times for 3 mana. You could potentially use this in like an aggro deck, right? Well, let's just say you're playing like aggro hunter, throwing stuff out there. Or actually, no, probably more of a demon hunter card because it actually is trying to build around tokens and having minions with high attack. So I think that this could be maybe okay in a demon hunter deck where you play a 4/1 that gives you another 4/1 so your opponent has to kill it twice. You can trade into it once and leave yourself with a 4/1 your opponent still has to kill. This card is not terrible, but I don't think it's going to be that great either. Definitely, again, more of an arena card. Moving on, Pride Seeker, 3-mana 2/4 battlecry. Your next choose 1 card, cost 2 less. So essentially, this is a decently statted minion that can then immediately curve into a Nourish or something along those lines for 6 mana. Or you could potentially just play a 2-mana spell like Power of the Wild, that is free. So you could play like this and Power of the Wild on the same turn 3, with a couple of extra minions on the board if you were playing like an aggro druid. I think this card looks very, very good actually. You could build a solid choose 1 deck, like you could run the new card that draws you choose 1s and breaks them into both parts. You can run this, you can make them cheaper, along with the other, I think, legendary card that says play the, or maybe it wasn't legendary, I think it was actually just a rare that says cast the other choose 1 that you didn't already cast. So overall, I think that is pretty solid. It's a pretty good, this one at least is pretty good and pushes a new archetype. And this is going to help Wild with the choose 1 meta because you're going to be able to play it for cheaper. And you're going to get both costs out of it. Next, we have Protect the Innocent, a 5-mana paladin card. Summon a 5/5 defender with taunt. If your hero was healed this turn, summon another. I don't really know how this works in Paladin. Paladin doesn't have the most healing, but it does have some. Like we saw that new lifesteal card, the lifesteal like spell that pumps up a minion. That could be decent. It's just that this card is a little bit slow, so unless there's like a 1-mana heal card for Paladin, and you're able to play this on turn 6, seems a little weird to me, but not bad either, because like you could play a lifesteal minion in general, and potentially just heal off of it and play this turn 5 maybe. So I think this card has some potential, but it might be a card that sees more play down the road when more cards, like the next expansion or a mini set or something, when we get more heal-based cards for Paladin. Next we have Shield Shatter. Deal 5 damage to all minions, cost 1 less for each armor you have. So this is freaking amazing, like holy shit. Do you realize how strong this is with the 2-mana card that gains you 10 armor for the turn? That with Shield Shatter is basically a board wipe for 2 mana that also gains you 10 armor at least for the turn and 5 mana if you happen to wipe everything. Like, this is insane. I'm very excited for Control Warrior. This, along with both of the new control spells for Warrior that gain armor and do good board wipes and free stuff, very, 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 very strong. And all you have to do is play it when you don't have too many minions on the board. I think this is like a 5 out of 5 card. It's fucking amazing. 3-mana Reflecto Engineer. Battlecry, swap the attack and health of all minions in both players' hands. Ooh, in their hands. It's not on the board, so it's not like you can cheese out extra damage like that old 3-mana 3/3 that swapped stats. This is interesting. This is a very interesting card. I don't know if I like it, but you could definitely build a deck around it with like minions with high HP and low attack and try to be aggressive, or like a hand buff deck. I actually don't think this card is very good. I think it's interesting, but I don't think it's very good at all. I don't know how you build a deck around it. And if you do, and you make a minion with high health and low attack into a minion with high attack and low health, they're just so easy to kill. And a minion with high attack, low health will become a sticky minion, but won't do nearly as much damage. I don't know. This card feels weird to me. Unless you tech it against somebody else and you're doing something to specifically mess up the opponent, I think this card kind of sucks. Ram Commander. 2-mana 2/2 Battlecry. Add 2 rush 1 or 2 1/1 Rams with rush to your hand. This is a fine card. I'm assuming the Rams are beasts. Yeah, so that could be potentially something. But overall, a little bit underwhelmed by this card. Again, a good arena card. But overall, it's just kind of mediocre at best. Like it's like the 1/3 mech from Rush Warrior, but the problem is this card doesn't have a tribe right away, and it doesn't like synergize super well. Like you could potentially run this in a Rush Warrior, right? Rush Warrior might come back because you have more ways of getting small little rush minions into your hand, and you can conditioning them. Like that might not be bad. But other than that deck and maybe one or two others that are more like board based, again, this could potentially be good in like Token Demon Hunter. Other than those things, I feel like this card is going to be kind of lackluster. But already I came up with 2 decks where it might be okay, and so this card looks decent. Seed of Destruction. Shuffle 4 Rifts into your deck. They summon 3/3 Dread Imps when drawn. It's basically similar to the new, what's it called? The new hero for Warlock, right? And that shuffles 3 into your deck, and then your hero powers draw a card and shuffle 1 more. Rifts into your deck. So I think this card looks interesting. It's a Fel spell. It's only 2 mana, shuffling 4 things into your deck in a class that draws a ton of cards. And the Fel Rift itself is a Fel spell, so if you're talking about some of the new cards that synergize with Fel spells and stuff, this card looks quite solid with those. So yeah, I think this card actually looks surprisingly decent. They're really pushing this Fel Rift, Fel spell sort of deck, and I'm pretty for it, honestly. Like a kind of new way to play Zoolock, just by summoning minions with spells. Could be cool. Next we have Shivering Sorceress, a 1 mana 2/2. Reduce the cost of your highest cost spell in hand by 1. This card's amazing. This is going to be really, really good in big spell mage. It's going to be a great way to keep up pressure on the board so you don't necessarily have to get blown out of the water. Honestly, like 2 years ago, a 2/2 vanilla card with no text was played in a lot of decks, especially in Highlander decks. It would be like one of your 1-drops. This, along with the Pirate for Warrior, I forget its name off the top of my head. Very interesting cards, very interesting. So I'm for it. I like it a lot. I think that it'll help out Mage quite a bit as well, just because I think that they kind of struggle early game and into aggro decks, and it helps out big spell Mage, which is really cool because it is an archetype I am very much looking forward to. So I am all for this. Next, we have a 2 mana 3/2 elemental. Add a windshield to your hand, which says freeze a minion, draw a card. So it is another frost spell. This is a normal spell as well. We will get to this in a second, but this is a normal spell that you can also put in your deck. This helps Elemental Shaman by giving you another elemental to play potentially with the way to draw cards, but also could just, help a Frost Shaman, right? Giving you a Frost spell to potentially combo with the new 7-drop legendary, the Glacier or Bearshear or whatever his name is. I forget what his name is. But that guy that summons a 3/4 for every elemental or every Frost spell that you play, this will synergize with that. And it'll synergize with a couple of other cards that focus on cards being frozen. I like this card a lot. 3 mana 3/2, decent tempo card. Gives you a new card that is a stall card and a draw card. This card is just really good. I think this card is a solid like 4. Next we have the Snowblind Harpy. So 3 mana 3/4, battle cry. If you're holding a frost spell, gain 5 armor. Again, really good in, let's just say hypothetically, Mage or Shaman. Very good at keeping the meta, or not keeping the meta, keeping the deck alive. You're able to protect yourself into more aggressive decks, and it's a 3 mana 3/4, which is good stats. Honestly, this is really, really strong. Wait, this is actually a really strong card, especially if you build a deck around it. I'm going to say this is like a 4 or 5, especially in the decks that it's going to be really good in. Wow, that was actually surprising. Next, we have Snowfall Guardian. Battlecry frees all other minions. Gain +1/+1 for each minion frozen. This is really, really good as well. You could potentially just... I think that it's pretty solid. It basically shuts down aggro decks, and even if you're playing into a big deck, you could just freeze a couple of big minions. This might not become as big, but you freeze a couple of their big minions. They're not able to kill you that turn. It freezes stuff, so there's synergy that way. Honestly, I think this card is surprisingly decent. 5 mana is a little slow, but considering it freezes everything, it's probably fine. And at the worst case, this is probably going to be a 5 mana 5/5 freeze everything, or a 5 mana 4/4 freeze their biggest minion if it's the only other thing on the board. But at that point, worst case scenario, you could also just like hero power and play this on the same turn if your opponent has something big, because that probably means it's late game. So I think this card looks pretty good. Not amazing, but good, like a 3.5. Next, we have a Paladin Stoneheart Vindicator. 3 mana 3/1, draw a spell that costs 3 or less. It costs 0 this turn. This is just solid. This is just a solid card. It doesn't specify that it has to be holy. You could potentially get the 3 mana new card that I just showed you at the beginning of this video that gives something Divine Shield +2/+1 and Lifesteal for a turn. Could be solid. Or it could be something as simple as like a Hand of Adal to draw an extra card, or a Libram of Wisdom. I think that this card looks pretty solid. It basically is a 3 mana 3/1 draw card that helps. Also, I don't know how this interacts with Librams, because you'll draw a spell, but I think it's the spells are still full cost until you draw them, but if they are reduced cost right off the bat, you could potentially even get like a Libram of Justice off of this, which could be quite solid as well. So I don't fully know that interaction yet. If somebody knows that, tell me in the comments. But yeah, this card looks pretty solid, especially in like potentially more of a slower deck. Also with the new one that sets a minion to 1/1, right? You could set a minion to 1/1 and give the stats that it got rid of to some minion in your hand. That's a 3 mana card, could be pretty solid, and it costs 0 that turn, so you can play this and that on the same turn. I think that this card looks pretty cool. I think it looks pretty good. Stormpike Aid Station. At the end of your turn, give your minions +2 HP, and it lasts for 3 turns. A little underwhelmed. I don't think that there are going to be enough minions on board for Priest to actually utilize this, but, you know, to each their own. I just think that this is one of the weaker like environment cards. 4 mana 4/3 Stormpike Battle Ram Rush Deathrattle. Your next beast costs 2 less. I think this card is just a little bit slow for Hunter, right? I don't really think that it's going to utilize the mana cheat. I feel like there are better cards out there. There's a 4 mana 5/2 rush minion that allows you to trigger another Deathrattle, which I just think is like a better version of this. It does more damage. They'll still both die to like similar things because they have lower health than their cost should have, but I think that the lion is just better, right? Obviously this card has the potential to be good in some decks, especially if it's like a full beast hunter. This could be solid, but I'm a little bit underwhelmed. Maybe if it was like 3 less, so you could maybe play like a 3 mana minion right after, but that might be too strong. I don't know, it just feels a little bit weak to me, honestly. Maybe not, maybe I'm wrong about this one, and beast hunter's really good and it runs this, but I'm just a little bit underwhelmed. Next, we have a 4 mana 2/6 taunt. If you took 5 more damage on your opponent's turn, if you took 5 more damage on your opponent's turn, this costs 1. So if you're playing against an aggro deck like Face Hunter, and they just hit you with 1 or 2 minions and hero power, you can play a 2/6 taunt for 1 mana. This is gonna be amazing, amazing in a warrior deck, especially with the guy that draws cards whenever you play a taunt minion. This is potentially very, very good. And just good in the control meta in general, it can really punish an opponent for playing a very aggressive deck. I actually like that a lot. Next we have Storm Pike Quartermaster, which is a 2 mana 2/2. After you cast a spell, give a random minion in your hand +1/+1. This could be just good in hand buff Paladin, right? Because there are a decent amount of spells. Or you could turn a Libram Paladin into a hand buff Paladin because you could cast a ton of spells for free. I think that that could be potentially decent. This could be good in a Libram Paladin deck or a hand buff deck, maybe, depending on your build. I think that this card surprisingly has some decent potential. Next is to the front. 2 mana for this. Your minions cost 2 less this turn, but not less than a 1. So you basically play this, so you could play multiple other things. I think that this card looks decent. Like, let's just say you have like 2 6-cost cards in your hand. You can play this and play both 6-cost cards. So essentially, this card allows you to play 14 mana worth of cards if you want to play 2 minions. So if you have, or 12 mana worth of cards with 2 minions, but you have to add this one in as well. And if you're playing 3 minions, you can play even more. It would be 14 mana worth of cards. So you could potentially play this on like turn 6 or whatever and play a whole bunch of like 3 and 4 cost minions. This isn't bad. I just don't know how this will fit. Maybe in a rush warrior, like the one I was talking about, right? You play this in a rush warrior, you pump up your hand with conditioning, then you play this and dump your hand. Could be pretty solid. But I'm a little bit underwhelmed by it. But there's definitely going to be decks for it. Like, Mana Cheat will always find a way. But I'm just a little underwhelmed. Next, we have the Tower Sergeant. A 4-mana, 4/4 battle cry. If you control at least 2 other minions, gain +2/+2. Yeah, okay, this will be decent in an aggro deck, I guess. But I don't think it's going to be good enough. It's 4 mana. It's a little bit slow. This will probably be more of a arena card, honestly. It's just a decently statted neutral minion with a decent ability. It's definitely an arena card for sure. Troll Centurion. 8 mana, 8/8 rush, honorable kill, deal 8 damage to the enemy hero. That's decent. It's basically like, oh, your opponent plays the Morgue Forge Fiend. This is basically just like an aggressive version of that card. I think it's going to be very difficult to honorable kill a minion with 8 HP. But it could definitely be used in a control deck to kill off something, right? It could definitely be used in a control deck to kill off a big minion that your opponent plays, like their top end, and also do damage yourself. So I think this could be really good in a control deck. Next thing is Vitality Surge. Draw a minion. Restore health to your hero equal to its cost. It's a 2-mana holy spell. Oh, so this is probably one of those heal spells that we wanted to play with the 5 mana that summons taunts and summons another one if you healed. So that's actually pretty good. And you draw a card off of it and heal. So if you play like a big paladin or something like that, you could end up healing a ton. Or worst case scenario, you just heal and you draw something like cheap or mid-range, but you still enable some extra cards and heal a little bit. Do I think this is great? Meh. Do I think this is more of an arena card? Probably. But it's definitely not awful. Next, we have Wildpaw Cavern. At the end of your turn, summon a 3/4 elemental that freezes. It lasts 3 turns. This is basically going to be for 4 mana over the course of 3 turns. It's going to be 9/12 stats, which is decent. The ability to freeze, which is really good in Shaman. So yeah, I like it. I think that this is, and the minions that get summoned are elementals. So there could be some elemental synergy there if there are things that buff elementals, or if you're playing this in like a maybe like weird freeze N'Zoth Shaman, could resummon one of these, which freezes minions, which could be pretty solid. Although I'm not necessarily sure you'd want to do that, but they do have a tribe, which is nice. Potentially some synergy down the road. I like this card. I think it's a little bit slow, but again, in a control deck, especially one that is getting a lot of support and one that has a lot of things going for it, right? Like, you have some new neutral control cards that'll help keep you alive, like a new 1-mana taunt if you took a ton of damage. Maybe you could play that and Wildpaw Cavern on turn 5 together. Could be pretty solid. Next, we have the Wildpaw Knoll. 5 mana, 4/5 rush, costs 1 less for each card you added to your hand from another class. Yes! I love rogue decks. I love Thief Rogue. Oh my goodness, I'm actually really excited for this. It doesn't necessarily even say, like, this turn. I think this could just be just over the course of the game, which means that this could be even better. I like this a lot. I like Wildpaw Knoll. I think it's a pretty cool card. I just like Thief Rogue. I think it's fun. Definitely leads to some meme moments where you can definitely make some content. Wind Chill, solid card, not broken or anything. It's a 1-mana freeze and draw card. It's got some flexibility because it helps cycle through your deck and stalls your opponent out for a while, and is a frost spell for Shaman. But since you have an elemental that generates this for you already, you probably don't want to run that elemental and Wind Chill both. You could probably just go 1 and 1. Or probably go 2 of one and none of the other. So I don't know, Wind Chill, potentially playable, but because the elemental might not be as playable as the 3/2 elemental we went over a little bit earlier. Next we have the last legendary that we have not gone over that technically came out today as well, Wing Commander Mulveric, which is a 4-mana 2/5 rush. Your minions have honorable kill, summon a 2/2 wyvern with rush. This isn't a battle cry though, so this is an ongoing ability, so remember, it's like Mr. Smite. Don't trade this in first on accident. Trade in your other minions first. And if you summon other minions, they get this ability as well. So you could potentially get like 1 wyvern out. Let's just say you have this and you're playing against a spell druid, right, that played Glowfly Swarm. You play this, you trade in once, honorable kill, you get a new 2/2 rush minion that gets this honorable kill, and you can just trade into all of them because the ability is continuous. So pretty cool card, some cool synergies potentially. Worst case scenario, you're just able to summon a couple of extra minions. I guess worst case scenario is a 4-mana 2/5 with rush, but best case scenario, you can summon some extra minions, which will be pretty neat. And overall, very excited about this card. So yeah, that's about it. All these other cards have been released for more than a day. This was the only other one that was released today. And since I flipped to this card, this one will do really well in a more Fel-based Warlock deck, like with the Fel portals and whatnot. Could be kind of cool. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I will see you guys in the next one. If you guys want a full breakdown of every card with a star rating and have it be like an hour-long video, I can do that as well. Just let me know. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.